I have to ask you a total nerd question. I got your big book of
Oh
design.
yeah.
Is there any, you usually do a design. Is there anything that made you bring out your artist tools that you designed specifically for this movie that you had?
One critter.
No
I call them all critters because sometimes there's so many of them I can't remember the names quickly. It's like trying to remember the names of all your children and their birth
Right.
order, instantly, which is harder for you than it is for me.
You did it again, man. Even though, there's enough spectacle in the film to drive people to the theater to see it, the real power of it is just, once again, the emotion, the drama. You could release it as is unfinished and it would blow people's minds.
Oh no.
Because it was, I can't wait to see it completely done.
Let's do it.
Just breathe. Breathe.
There's so many stories you could tell in Pandora, this world you've created and these great characters. But what was important for you to focus on in expanding the first film? Because you reach all new dramatic heights with this film. It's just unbelievable.
Right. Well, I wrote the first film in 95. I wasn't thinking about being a husband, father, family guy, or any of that stuff. It had its own momentum, and that took us up through the release in 2009. But sitting down in 2012, because I went off and did some deep ocean stuff, and built a sub and went down 7 miles and all that cool stuff in my other life, right? But when I put my big movie hat back on, I said, what story do I want to tell? Of course, I'm going to go back to Pandora. I'm going to go back to Jake and Neytiri. And it's like, what if Romeo and Juliet didn't die? What if they married and had kids and they had a family, and they had to think about something besides each other and something besides, in the case of Jake and Neytiri, the cause that they're fighting for. And Jake basically and Neytiri have sort of taken it upon themselves to try to save their world from these hostile colonizers from Earth, the alien invasion. Where's their family in that universe? Is that gig first and foremost, or is being a mother and a father first and foremost? At what point do you have to, put up your spurs or lay down your guns or whatever it is? And they've got boys coming up, right, that want to be warriors, want to get in the fight, 14, 15 years old, that are feeling that testosterone and that sense of mission. How do you tell them, oh no, don't be like me?
Right.
So I was going through, when I was writing the new films, I was going through that as a father of teenagers, as a father of sons, of daughters, seeing my wife Susie's struggles with sons and daughters, and what you go through. And my conclusion out of it all was, no matter what you go through in terms of dysfunction, the family's your fortress. The family's the most important thing, right? And you always come back to that. And so I wanted to somehow, through my art, through my storytelling, convey that.
This family is our fortress.
Seeing your lens, your family lens applied, it is so exciting to watch as a family. I saw it with my kids, and it's wonderful. And that line is in the trailer. I thought it was a good line, that line. I thought that's a great trailer line. Your family is your fortress. But when you see the movie, that is really forefront. That the movie lives up to that line. It makes it so much more resonant because you can tell you're really invested. And I was wondering how much of your own family did you bring into it, because it just felt so real, yet so excited and heightened.
My kids and I have a laugh around it now, because what they see is my laughable attempt to portray them, right? It's like each one knows which character was modeled on them, and they totally reject it. It's like, no, you don't understand me at all, which is perfect, right?
That's totally the attitude. But I think there's so much that families and people will just latch on to different characters, because you have such a richness of characters now, and it feels like a wonderful family dynamic going on. And that's what I was wondering. Yeah, it just feels so real.
I think it's sometimes dangerous to tell a story with a lot of characters, because sometimes it can lack focus, but I just took that challenge on. I think in the epic landscape, epic storytelling, which I was trying to emulate, whether it's a Star Wars universe or a Lord of the Rings universe or whatever, something that's a persistent world that people can come back to and enjoy over time. You have a lot of characters and you have a lot of subplots that you can follow, and ultimately you bring them all together to the same, big emotional confrontation or the same battle space or whatever it is. I wanted that challenge. I wanted that challenge in my life artistically at that moment, back in 2012, when I really set myself down the path to develop this.
Well, it's extremely focused. I mean, you get a full-on story, but you get this taste of these other characters that makes you just want more. And you can see why, when you watch it, you're designing more films for this world and these characters, because it's that rich.
The way of water connects all things.
What was the writing process like? It's a story that stands on its own, but it's going to have to supply for future. How did you go mapping this thing?
Well, look, you write your own films as well to a large extent. And so you know what it can be like. For me, it's a journey of discovery. You set down a path and you've got some vague goals in mind. In my case, I just start writing a lot of notes. And you know this because I think I gave you 600 pages of notes on Alita about the world and how cyborgs work and why they have to eat and all that stuff. That's my process. I start to try to get to a granular level of the world, what it's like to live in that world, what it's like to be that person. I was starting from Jake and Neytiri and some of the other secondary characters. And so okay, what's their reality the day after the humans are gone? What's their reality the day the humans come back? And just sort of doing kind of the obvious stuff. What's their reality the day their first child of an interracial marriage, a mixed race child is born? How does the community react to that? It's a new thing on Pandora because Jake has human DNA. He's mixed race, essentially, right? His avatar. And so he's marrying a pure not V woman. What are the ramifications there for the kids? What if the kids are born a little physically different? Which, I explored that, how does that impact the psychology of these kids as they grow up? How does growing up the son of Toruk Makto, the great deliverer, the great hero of lore, who's not that guy, he's just your dad, he's just a grouchy guy that that disciplines you. What's it like for that boy? So then all of a sudden there's a boy in the story. Okay, give him a name. It's just one thing sort of follows another, in that creative flow. You know how it goes.
Yeah, but this is at such a scale. No one's even attempting the kind of storytelling you're doing here. That's what I think audiences are going to be so excited about. I
think if you look at something like the Rings of Power, that multiple storylines, really interesting characters, that's what I was aspiring to. But they had a guide. I didn't have the guidebook yet. I had to had to write my own Silmarillion or Lord of the Rings first in the form of notes, right? But I also didn't want to do it all alone. I knew that I was going to do multiple movies. I didn't want to do it all alone. I wanted to work with writers that I enjoyed working with. So I created a little writer's room like you would for a TV show, right? And I sat in there. There were 4 other writers, and it was meant to be 3 teams: me and another writer, me and another writer, me and another writer. And then one of the writers turned into the team of Rick and Amanda ampersand writers. So we eventually wound up with 4 plus me in the room. And that's like a TV series, right? So we were breaking story. And the funny thing was, I didn't tell them which particular film, 1, 2, or 3, or 2, 3, or 4, they were going to get to do until the very last day. After 6 months, they finally got their assignments of which movie they were going to write. So that we sat in that room, and since they didn't know, they had to equally invest in all the stories.
Right.
So we broke story across 3 movies in a 6-month period with the whiteboard, just writing endlessly around the room. And it was great. It was just such a great creative playpen, for us all.
It feels like the richness that you would get from a series, but it's in a film, and it's 3.5 hour movie, but that's
well it was when you saw it. Wow. It's now 3:02. It's 3 hours and 2 minutes.
But I mean, still
plus credits, plus a half hour of credits.
You normally watch 10 hours of a miniseries, where this is in one movie. And so it grabs you by the throat with story and characters that you love from the beginning. It moves like a bullet train, which I love about it. And
thanks. That's a big compliment coming from you, because your editing is flawless in terms of pace.
Yeah, this pace is, and there's just so much story and a drive that you just eat it up. We just adore it. I was really taken by it, and I loved that Neytiri hunts while she's pregnant, and then you also have one of the characters goes in battle and pregnant. Why was that important to you? Because it was just really just puts you in the world.
Well, I think, everybody's always talking about female empowerment, but what is such a big part of a woman's life that we as men don't experience? We get to experience war and all that sort of thing, and the women are sheltered because of the fairer sex, and I thought, well, if you're really going to go all the way down the rabbit hole of female empowerment, let's have a female warrior who's 6 months pregnant in battle. Now, it doesn't happen in our society, probably hasn't happened for hundreds of years, but I guarantee you back in the day, women had to fight for survival and protect their children and so on. And it didn't matter if they were pregnant. And pregnant women are a lot more capable of being a lot more athletic than we as a culture really kind of acknowledge. And my wife, Susie, she treated pregnancy like an athletic event that she prepared for over and over, and we practiced the Bradley method together. So I got to see, this kind of amazing icon of the pregnant uber mom, in real life. So I thought, I want to tell that story. Let's take the real boundaries off. To me, it was the last bastion that you don't see. Wonder Woman and all the Captain Marvel, all these other amazing women, they come up, but they're not moms and they're not pregnant while they're having to fight evil.
And when I was visiting you, many times I got to go look at Lightstorm, but I saw firsthand some of the physical costumes that were built and designed. It was important for you to build physical pieces for characters that were going to be completely CG, because it really immersed you in the world. And I could really now see the scale, texture, but why was that important to you?
Well, the key to doing a CG character and making them look real is everything about them, right? How rain interacts with their face and drains off and catches in their eyelids or catches in their hair, how their hair flows in the wind or underwater, and how their costume moves on their body and has its own weight and motion. So to understand that, we had to make every costume, have a model wear it, to see how it hangs and how it moves and how it behaves underwater, or how it behaves flying on a cron, which is one of their flying creatures at high speed, fluttering in the wind and so on. And we do photographic studies, and then we'd have to derive physics-based simulations from those photographic studies. It also gave the Weta folks, Weta Effects, that do all of our finish work, it gave them a physical thing to scan to get the texture right and the weight of it right and so on. So the idea is, if you're going to create a fully simulated reality, you start with reality.
Now,
well, you know this. I mean, we had the same thing with Alita in Battle Age.
The world, though. I mean, we mostly shot on real sets. There was very little, if any, volume capture. We were all of her wardrobe physically existed, but then was done as CG. So it's kind of the same problem, just writ larger, because there's more characters. And even though you're the most technically proficient director of any generation by far, you're also a real actors director. I mean, I've seen you work with your actors, and I've seen just the process you created, where you can really go in there and get your hands dirty and operate virtual camera with them and be right there with them. Even though your films include great spectacle, their heart lies in the story and these fantastic performances you get out of your actors. How do you feel you've evolved as an actors director over the years? Because I've always felt you're one, but seeing you in these movies really come out and seeing what you're working with, it's astonishing.
Well, I've had the opportunity to work with some really, really fine actors over time, and you learn from them as you go along. And I started as a writer, terrified of actors, and I found out right away that as a writer, I know what the character's thinking. And what does the actor want to know most above everything? What's the character thinking? What are they feeling? What's their history maybe that leads them to that particular moment? And, I had to discipline myself earlier in my career to give them input that was actable, not too intellectual, not too literary, not about kind of what's going to happen 4 scenes down the line because of a choice they make right now, but to focus it on that diamond point of that moment. What are you feeling right now? And why are you feeling that? And especially working with the young actors, I had to find little connections to things in their real lives that they could use, whether it was their own family dysfunctions or whatever. I mean, I didn't get into it at that kind of deep level of really kind of unpacking all their demons, but I would encourage them to connect to something that made them feel that way. As you know, because you worked with an awful lot of young actors and found young actors that have gone on and had great careers and so on. You got to communicate very differently, because they may not be professionals, but you didn't cast them if they weren't able to project something and have those feelings somewhere inside and connect to them. Every actor has their own channel their own frequency that they hear on. Some want a lot of input, some want input even during the moment, right during the take. And I love the rolling reset where you just keep going and keep going and keep going. I don't say let's do a take. I say let's do a session. let's work the scene. Let's just keep the camera rolling. Let's work the scene. I'll walk in, we talk, jump back out. Some actors don't like that, and you got to be sensitive to that. They want to create their own, reality in their own way. And, it's just listening. It's just listening and sharing, as the writer, once again, and respect, with Sam and with Zoe. I mean, I had to earn their respect on the first film. By the second film, we were a team, and it was just so great. I remember Zoe's first day back, she just dropped into character. She gave one of my favorite lines in the movie. She's talking to Miles Quaritch, the bad guy, right? And she killed him in the first movie, but he comes back, reincarnated as a kind of, Avatar clone. And she's yelling at him from behind a tree, and she just comes around the tree and goes, "Demon, I will kill you as many times as I have to." And she was just so furious and so in character. I was like, "Oh, we're good. She's back."
Right away. No time lost.
So what does her heartbeat sound like?
Mighty.
One of my most impressive performances by 14-year-old is Sigourney. This is the third time you've directed her in a movie.
Yeah.
This time she plays a 14-year-old empath of herself. Why is that important for you to have her play her? Obviously, for some reason.
She was 14 once. I think people can always play younger.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because they've been through that stage. Playing older is hypothetical. Right. They have to do a lot of research. Sigourney didn't have to do a lot of research because she was 14 once, and she remembered what an anxious time it was in her life because she was very tall, and so she was kind of shunned, by the other kids and by the boys and all that stuff that everybody goes through. We all have our different versions of teen angst, but she just tapped back into that, and she had a really interesting process. She did her research. She hung out with some present day 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And she just sort of used that to remind herself about the mannerisms, the eye roll,
Wow,
and various other, and the ways of talking, the way of forming a sentence, the physical body energy. And then she just became younger. It was the strangest thing. I worked with her for a year in that character, and she was so buoyant on the set. And she's not that method an actor, but she just carried the character with her very lightly at all times. And I think that helped her a lot. And she said, "Now I'm not going to do a voice thing." And she did a voice thing, but she did it without thinking about it. Because when she came back to Loop, she was an octave lower, and she sounded like Sigourney Weaver, commander of a starship, but when she was Kiri, she sounded different. Wow. And so that's totally internal acting from the inside out, which I just love. Plus she's kind of goofy, so it's easy to sort of encourage her immature side. It's quite easy, much easier than you would imagine if you don't know her.
I can't wait to see it again, because there's many times I forgot it was her. You're so invested in the character. She plays a great character that I had to go, "Oh, wait a minute, this is Sigourney." It just really is convincing, really blows you away. She does a great job in that.
Yeah, and it looks just like her. I mean, we got lots of research photos and films of her when she was a teen and so on, and we did a lot of reference because she was quite young when she made Alien. So we really looked at that, and so we had to create an alien character from Sigourney, but we had to make it from Sigourney's 14 or 15-year-old, which was like a double problem, because we always want the characters to look like the actors as much as possible, but still be not V.
So it's been said, your movies always have a theme that is bigger than the genre, but what would you say is the theme or themes of The Way of Water?
Thematically, obviously, it's still about the environment. It's still about what I call the struggle between the takers and the caretakers. So the indigenous people are the caretakers. They're the ones that have the power in our world right now on Earth to reconnect us with a vision of nature that's more protective and cooperative and harmonious than the one we're currently living in, which if we don't adopt, we will die out. It's pretty much that simple. So we have to kind of come full circle. We have to take our civilization, keep all the good of it, and we have to somehow reconnect ourselves with the balance, the great balance, as the Na'vi call it. So that's a theme, and then the other theme that runs through all the new films is the theme of family. Jake states it at one point. He says, Sullies stick together. That's his family, right? That's their family motto. He said it was our greatest weakness and our great strength. And you see it. That's what the movie, he says it in the movie, and that's what you see. They stick together against all odds, even when they don't like each other. even when they're having all kinds of problems, but it's a unifying motif, and their strengths complement each other in an amazing way. And it's very much about fathers and sons within that sort of greater theme. There's definitely a theme about fathers and sons, and the expectation of living up to the father's, or the attempt to live up to the father's expectations, at the same time be yourself, rebel against that, chart your own path, the conflict that creates, and the father having to learn to see his children for who they really are, which is part of every parent's journey.
Yeah. When I was seeing early artwork before I knew what any of the stories were about, I was so excited about the fact that you were expanding the world of Pandora and both the biomes and the cultures, and was curious to see how it was going to work in story-wise. And incredible. What was it, the challenges of that, and why was that important to you to create, those other cultures and the other biomes?
Well, if you look at the way George Lucas did it in the universe that he created, which is astonishing still to this day, right? I think we can all agree on that. He chose to make each different biome, each different culture have their own planet distributed around the galaxy. And I thought, well, that's not the way Earth works. I mean, Earth has, it's the Arctic, the Antarctic, the equatorial, jungle, rainforest, desert, mountains, all these different biomes and all these different cultures with incredible variation. And, in doing my research on indigenous culture, you just see such an explosion of ideas and, wardrobe and belief systems and so on. I thought, man, I can spend as many films as I want to make just on Pandora, just by going to different places. And the interesting thing on Pandora that's unique, not the way we are on Earth, is that all the cultures have some commonality, because they all believe in the same thing. They all believe in the great balance, and they all believe that there's a higher intelligence in the plants, in the network that sort of controls life there, which we don't have here. We wish we had, and we sort of make up Mother Nature as an idea, but they have it for real there. So their cultures are unified but distinctive.
Mm-hmm.
And they have different kind of local rules and local dialects and ways of doing things. The commonality and the differences are what's fun, because that's where we should be going, I think, as humanity. We should celebrate our commonality, not our differences.
Right.
But I mean, we should celebrate our commonality, but we should also celebrate our differences and the unique voices and perspectives that we all bring, and not make it us versus them, us versus the other.
In addition to the alien vistas and the creatures, you also bring a lot of new futuristic human technology that comes along.
Oh, yeah.
RDA's returning to Pandora. Do you have a favorite new human design of that, and that you and your team created for?
Yeah, look, I mean, I can't not encourage my designers to come up with the coolest new tech. I mean, that's just a given. Maybe that's not what the audience is going to see, but it's there anyway. So we've got new helicopter gunships, new flying ships, and we've got this really, really cool ship. It's a bad guy ship, maybe 2/3 the length of Titanic, and it flies, but in a very plausible way based on real technology that we have here on Earth called wing and ground effect, right? So the Russians built these big things they called chronoplans, and then they were wing and ground effect ships that would go 300 miles an hour. This is real stuff. So we just took that idea, mutated it, and then we also built a creature that does the same thing, that flies in ground effect, skimming over the water like a flying fish. And it's a pretty cool creature too. He's badass, called the Skimwing. Look, I just love hanging out with the design team. I think of myself as, through the writing process, creating the provocation to fire off all their imaginations. Yeah. And then the art just starts going up on the wall. And to me, that's in a way one of the most fertile creative periods on the film. And because you're always coming up with all sorts of crazy designs. Some of them you come up with yourself. But there was one creature that we were struggling with, trying to capture exactly its soulfulness, which is a strange thing. It's almost wrong to call it a creature. It's so intelligent and emotional and has language and everything that it's really a character. But it sort of fell under the creature design bailiwick. And I finally took that design myself and just, holed up at my little art studio for a couple of days and drew it all up. Great. And that's not to steal credit from the other designers, because they designed the whole rest of the world and all the plants and animals in it. I just did the one.
But I know them too.
That's the Chilcoon.
they want to get you drawing too. Everyone's always trying to get you to draw something. I was always trying to get you to draw something. It's just the nerd in us wants to see the guy who designed the Terminator and this Queen,
Yeah,
Queen, pull out the pens, the old tools, and go
exactly.
just mono with paper.
Yeah, dig up the gun from the backyard.
That's cool, man. So having done Alita with you, I know you never use the term motion capture. It's always performance capture.
Yeah,
because that's what you're just getting performance, and
right.
really highlights performance. Everything else is punted to later. So it's pure focus on performance, which is why you can get such incredible performances. Can you speak to the actor-director centric process that you've kind of created with this performance capture?
Well, it's interesting, there's not much there physically for the actors to work with, but I think that's actually kind of overrated. What's there for them to work with is the other actors. Right. Which is really ultimately 90% of it right there. We give them props and wardrobe stuff to interact with. The physicality, you're not in a rainforest. If you think about a film set, there's a grip with his butt crack hanging out, up on a ladder holding a flag. And then you look around, it's populated by ladders and people and lights and all sorts of stuff. So you're not really going to be in the rainforest or the Library of Congress or wherever the hell you're supposed to be shooting anyway, visually. Yeah. So the actors rely on each other. And they have that in spades. The beauty of the performance capture is that you can just roll and you can try it a certain way. And then if you don't like where the scene's going by take 3 or 4, you just change the whole staging, turn the whole thing around. You only need one good take.
Right.
And from one good take, you can extract every close up, every 2 shot, the steady cam move, the slow dolly in, everything. You can pull it all out later when the actors don't even have to be around for that part of it. So in a sense, all of the photography is taken out of it. So it's really more like a big play rehearsal. And when you got it, you just move on because you've got all the coverage you need. Yeah. So if you think about film acting, it's really a bit more like kabuki theater, where they have to, it's more artificial because you have to do it over and over again and hit that same tenor, that same performance, that same cry moment or whatever it is, over and over and over for the coverage. And that's not the case with the performance capture. So I kind of like it better in a lot of ways from an acting standpoint. I know the actors that have worked with me on these films have really enjoyed it and are eager to come back and get the whole thing done.
It's just always the opposite of what people expect. It's more freeing than it is constricting. It's actually more freeing because
it's more freeing. Yeah. And, actors are very leery of it that haven't done it, rightfully, any new technology, because they grew up in photographic cinema, and there's no real photography involved in this, so it's just different. But I think once you've been through the cycle, like when Sam and Zoe had been through the cycle of the first movie and they saw the result on screen afterwards, they were like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And so they had a confidence coming into it. And then the new actors that came in, especially the young ones, they kind of, it's just all kind of play for them, right? And then I showed them some scenes and they went, oh, holy shit.
Yeah, and the level of what you could show them now compared to the first film got right into it. That's always the best when you can show them.
Right.
I'm going to just ask you a wrap-up question, so you can just tell us anything else you would want us to know about Way of Water, why people should go see this movie, because it's back in a big way, and we want people to go see it and support it because it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I know that their minds will be blown all over again, but
I think people's minds will be blown. That was our goal. It would be to fail to not do that in a way, right. So you get together the best artists that you can find and the best technique that's now a proven technique over time. And you put something in a theater that's authored for the big screen, whether you see it in 2D or whether you see it in 3D, see it in IMAX, see it in Dolby Vision, it's authored for the big screen. And part of it, I think here's the part that people will be surprised by or are not expecting. They see the trailer or whatever, and it kind of looks like a brochure for a weekend in Bora Bora. It's just all about the beauty and that sort of thing, and the promise of being transported to another world and getting to enjoy it. That's part of it. But there's another thing that happens when you go to a movie theater. You make a contract with yourself to give that movie its time. 2 hours, 40 minutes, 3 hours in the case of ours, 3 hours, 2 minutes. You give it its time to work on you, and you don't get up. Now you can run and go pee, but anyway, you don't get up. You don't multitask. You don't go order a pizza. You don't talk to your pals and put it on pause. There's no remote, right? So it's a different level of commitment, but what you get is a different level of impact. Your emotional impact level goes from here to here. So you add that on top of the sense of presence that you get from the 3D experience, the sense of wraparound, I'm really there on Pandora. You're going to get that in the theater. Now you can watch it on streaming later. You can wait, and you'll never know. You'll never have that deep experience, right? And that's when it's going to hit you. This movie is going to hit people a lot harder than they think.
Yeah.
Because there's death, there's loss, there's grief, there's fighting for everything that's right between relationships and in their greater struggle. There's real emotional stakes in this movie. And I don't think there's a way for us to sell that in a trailer. I don't think there's a way for us to sell that. So the story that's being told right now about the movie, while it's all good and positive, is half of the story.
Yeah, yeah.
To get the other half of the experience, you just got to go.
Yeah.
You got to go and bear witness. And that's what a movie should be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what we all strive for.
I love that you pulled it off again, and you've got me all charged up to see it again. I can't wait to see it
Well,
again.
you haven't seen it done, and I'm telling you, it's
That's
at
true. I haven't seen it
a whole
done.
different level. Let's do this again next time you got something coming out. We'll take a
sounds
look
good.
at it, and we'll work it. You know, Guillermo, our pal Guillermo, used to say that in Mexico, when somebody made a film, all the other filmmakers would gather around like a baby was being born. They'd all get involved in the process, and I actually think that's the way it should be. I think directors are too much lone wolves. You know, we shouldn't be lone wolves. We should be like college pals that are film geeks, you know?
Because you're so impressed when somebody pulls it off, you know, you're like, and especially if you know them, you're like, oh, that's right. You're the Clark Kent I know, but you're also Superman. You go and make these incredible movies, you know, where get along,
you stuck the landing.
And
right.
How do you keep the focus? I mean, I know the story is your drive for so many years on the project when you're working on one project like that. Because I did Alita when you were just starting to work on this, but that was back when we started 2015. I mean, to focus for such a long period of time, not just for you, but your team. How do you keep them?
It's not, look, I think it's the biggest challenge of directing is to always see the movie every day with new eyes.
Right.
You know, I mean, right? How do you do that? How can you do that? You know, so I think as we learn about human consciousness, we're realizing that there's this kind of mirror neuron thing where when you know somebody pretty well, you can kind of run a simulation of them in your head. Like if you're in a relationship or a friendship or whatever, you can kind of run a simulation in your head of how they're going to react if you say something X, Y, or Z. Are they going to be happy? Are they going to be pissed off? You know in advance what your intention is. That's how you form the sentence, right? So I think as directors, we have a bigger version of that simulation. That's the audience. And that audience, in my case, is populated by 300 or 400 of me when I was 14, basically, because that's all I can do, right? But you got to run it through that filter every single day and just see it with those fresh eyes. And I think it's the biggest challenge to keep it fresh. And I know actors go through the same thing, right? You know, it's a long plodding process to put together a couple of hours of something. So, you know, every day when I'm getting out my socks, you know, I just have a little moment of gratitude that I get to do this, you know? Now, sometimes that buzz lasts all day and sometimes it lasts till about 9 o'clock in the morning, you know?
Depending on the workload for the day.
Depending on what's going on, right? And then at the end, I get to be, I'm not going to be surprised, but I'm certainly going to be pleased to get to watch it all done because it's the first time it's fully in focus, right?
Right. Thank you so much. Good to talk to you about it. And
hey, man, great to talk to you. Hey, let's make another Alita film. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do that. Fans,
all right,
more
Blood Oath.
Let's do it.
Right?
Blood Oath right here.
Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Robert.